So firstly, very warm welcome to our business showcase interviews. My name is Ron Maycock. I'm the owner of Action Coach Castleford and also of Business Performance UK. I'm delighted to be joined today by Elliot Trim. Very good morning to you, Elliot.
Good morning, Ron.
Elliot is the co-founder and director of Carnage Competitive, which is a gaming and events business that we'll be hearing a lot more from Elliot about in a few moments' time. Before we do that, I just wanted to really explain what the purpose of these interviews actually is. We're surrounded by some amazing businesses in our region. Each of those have got their own stories to tell, and these interviews help us share their journeys, showcase their achievements, and ultimately maximize their exposure, all in the name of abundance and for the benefit of businesses across the whole of the UK. So without further ado, Elliot, tell me a little bit more about Carnage Competitive.
Yeah, sure. So Carnage Competitive, we are an events company that run Warhammer 40k competitive events all around Yorkshire. If you don't know what Warhammer 40k is, it's a tabletop game, analog game, where you will have a faction, an army with miniature, like toy soldiers, and a set of rules and codices that you will have for your particular faction that you use to battle your opponent. It's dice based and there's two players. There can be more than two players, but generally speaking, in a competitive environment, it's two players. And what we do is we enable players around Yorkshire in different venues to compete with one another. And we run 32-man events, which means there will be 16 games of Warhammer 40k 3 times in an event. And that's what we do.
Excellent. And a typical event, how long does that go on for? And is there a particular time of day that this is the most popular?
Yep. So events generally run on a weekend because the events are 12 hours. So each game will run for 3 hours, and we have 3 games in a 1-day event and 5 games in a 2-day event. So if it's a 1 day, we'll run it on a Sunday. It'll start at 10 and then finish at about 10 at night after an award ceremony. And then if it's a GT, as we call it, or a grand tournament, it'll run across 2 days. We'll have 3 games on the Saturday and then 2 games on the Sunday.
And you mentioned this is primarily starting around Yorkshire. Is this a UK-wide industry? And you mentioned tournaments. Is that isolated just with your tournament, or is this linked to results elsewhere? Do you get rankings and things like that?
Yeah, great question. So it's actually a Europe-wide, maybe even worldwide events. Sorry, let me start that again. Can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, what I'll do, I'll go 3, 2, 1, then we'll start. So,
yeah.
3,
sorry.
2, 1. So, Elliot, is this you mentioned it was a Yorkshire initiative. The actual events that you're doing, does that form part of a wider audience? Is this UK wide? Does it go further afield? Can you rank in these tournaments, or is it just isolated to the one event?
Yeah, so Warhammer 40k is actually played competitively globally. But one of the biggest scenes is actually in the UK, and across Europe actually. So that you can rank on something called the international tournament circuit, and whenever you go to a Warhammer 40k competitive event, when you submit your score, this gets uploaded to the ITC rankings, and you can see where you've placed in against other players in whatever region that you choose, so Europe, the world even. And in the UK, people are the biggest kind of Warhammer 40k scene is in the competitive scene. So
Right.
people want to go to events, they want to place on the ITC rankings. And what we do is we will register our events with the ITC International Tournament Circuit. So when anyone comes to one of our events, their scores will be uploaded automatically to this global ranking system. And there's 2 of us in the UK that run these tournaments in this kind of model. There's Warhammer tournaments, which are basically the big boys, we call them, and they run 400 to 500 man events. what we're looking to do is be the little brother of the Warhammer tournaments. We're running the smaller events to catch as many of the players as we can around Yorkshire, and then hopefully the rest of the UK in a few years' time. And then the players can come to our events, they can place on those rankings, and then attend the bigger super major events to try and get up there on the top tables and get, really place highly on those ITCs against some of the best players in the world.
So it's interesting because it sounds like the events are much more than just a game, and my limited knowledge of this market is historically a lot of these games would be done in a shop or above a shop, where they would then, I suppose the benefit would be you play the game, and if you need some spare parts or additional resource or whatever, you're in the shop and you can buy it. So there was always a reason for that. But it's interesting that you by the sound of it, you're trying to capture a market of home players or people that have only had the option of going to a shop, and making this much more about would just come to your area rather than there just happens to be a shop in the area. So it's giving a much greater reach to that. How much of that has come out of the changes, I guess, that were inherent during lockdown, and the fact that we couldn't socially interact? Is this one of the key drivers for you, that this is social interaction where you then get to play a game rather than it's a gaming night and you're probably not going to interact with that many people?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So our Carnage Competitive, what we try and do is, what our aim is to enable players to play wherever they are. So we, like you say, there might be a shop in Sheffield, Doncaster, Wakefield, Leeds, where local players will come and they'll go to the shop. Maybe they've got a nice little community there of players who they can organize games with, and then go down on an evening and play. But those particular shops will just catch that one area. Whereas in Carnage Competitive, we try and run in every area in Yorkshire, so that there will always be a local event for you to attend. And then if your local shop doesn't run the type of events that you want to play, or it's not as competitive as you'd like, or they're not on the days that you would want to play, then you can come to our events. We'll have one in your area and you can play. And absolutely, lockdown was a death knell for Warhammer 40k competitive players, because it's an analog game. You can't play it. You can't play it digitally. You need to be able to socially interact, and you don't just want to play the same person over and over again. So you might have to play. Some people were very lucky. They might have a bubble where a father and son might both play 40k together, but it's not going to be competitive. You're not going to be playing your friends and other people that you might want to test your skill against. So after lockdown finished, there was just a huge outcry for events, for people organizing games. There was chat boards, Discord servers, WhatsApp groups springing up. There were people crying out for games, looking for people to play. So it was the perfect time for us to say, right, let's take Carnage off the ground. Let's get traveling. Let's get putting these events in everywhere we can, so that these players who are desperate for competitive events can get there.
And how regularly are the events?
They're every month.
Every month.
So brilliant. What we'll do is we'll run a 1-day event 1 month, and then the second month, and then on the third month we'll run a 2-day event, and that goes on each quarter of the year.
And is it geared up to allow spectators who are just coming along for the social because one person is playing or whatever, they're not actually playing, or is it limited to literally there are 32 seats or whatever, and that's how many tickets that we sell?
You only have to buy a ticket if you're going to play. You can absolutely come along and watch. It's because of the length of games, it's not really ever been a spectator sport. However, this is one of the things that we at Carnage Competitive have identified, because people like to watch the games once they've been recorded. So we at Carnage Competitive, we've got a setup whereby we can record and live stream the top table. And what I mean by top table is at the last game of an event, the two players that are on table one have won all their previous games and are in the battle for the title of the event. They're there to place first. And we've got a setup whereby we can record that and live stream it, and people can watch either online, or we can, and obviously we'll post it online for people to watch as well. It's in the Warhammer 40k community. It's called a battle report. Mm-hmm. There is tons of content on Warhammer 40k battle reports all across YouTube and different other social media platforms. A lot of people do it in various different ways, obviously, but there's not a lot of people, or there's not a lot of events that actually televise or record that top table. And it can be incredibly close. It can be, the skill of the players to be on the top table is astronomical. You know, they're really good games to watch. And the only other event company that we know that actually does it is the guys who run the Las Vegas Open or the LVO. They will record their top table. So we thought, right, well, you know what, we could do that. But that also feeds nicely into our marketing. Mm-hmm. Because if we can record the top table, we're creating content for our YouTube channels, for our Instagram, for our Discord servers, that is essentially just, it doesn't even require any effort. We're already running the event. We might as well create some content while we're there. So we're creating that content and putting it out there.
You mentioned the marketing there. So I'm guessing one of the biggest challenges is getting the word out there that this is actually taking place. The inherent nature, as you say, especially through lockdown, is people have been isolated. There is an appetite for wanting to come along and socially interact. And it's making sure that people are fully aware that there is a local option. You don't have to go down to London to actually do this. So what are the other challenges that you're facing in terms of getting that message out? How, ultimately you are, putting bums on seats through your marketing. You are in certain areas a marketing business, not an events business. Because if you're not making people aware, then you've no event to run, you've no people to actually put in there. So what are the other challenges and what are the other routes to market that you're actually using to spread the word?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. We would probably be considered more of a marketing company than we are an events company, because we run an event, obviously, one weekend out of every month, but the other 28 days we're selling tickets. We're getting the marketing out there to say, yes, we have an event coming up and this is where it is, So we've got this was one of the biggest challenges for us, was trying to find the best ways of getting the Carnage name and logo out there so that people understood that we run events that they'd want to come to. So we've got a website, we've built a website. On it is all our events. Anytime that you want to buy a ticket, you have to go through our website to buy the ticket. So, and it'll have all the information about the events on there. And we also have merchandise on there that we sell, and people will buy the merchandise. For example, we've got t-shirts, we've got dice, we've got objective markers. So we've got a few people who have already bought objective markers and dice and t-shirts. They will go to an event, not one of ours, just any event. They'll wear our logo. They'll use our dice on the table with our logo on it. They'll use our objective markers, which stay on the table for the entirety of the game. And it's just free marketing for us. People who buy our merchandise and then will wear it, use it at events. And also myself and my co-founder, when we go to events, we'll wear all our merchandise and we'll use our merchandise dice so that people know where we're from. They know what we do. We're the Carnage Competitive.
Do you see that forming to an official team, almost like sponsoring a team of people that are traveling to various tables? Or
interesting you say that. We will not become a team. We will always be the events. What we look to do is attract the teams. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there is one of the biggest teams in the UK is Vanguard Tactics. Now, Vanguard Tactics, they are a a training company. They provide training for Warhammer 40k players to become better at what they do. And what we have tried to do is get in touch with Vanguard Tactics about sending their players or their graduates to our events so that they spread the word. They come to our events, and as long as we put on the best event that we can, they will then tell other people about that. Mm-hmm. They will tell the Vanguard Tactics students, the Vanguard Tactics players, and the whole team that yes, that they want to be there with and our events. Yeah.
Excellent. No, and it's interesting that you've made that level of separation between, you know, being an event and also having a team, rather than actually the route actually is probably quite a smart decision, is to use the marketing and various branded sort of merchandise to actually say this is what we do and these are our other events. So really interesting. So yep. What's actually happening within the industry at the moment? I know before we started we were talking through various different sort of things that might be happening. Some pretty big names starting to appear on the scene and things like that. So do you want to elaborate a little bit on what the future looks like for the Warhammer and gaming industry?
Yeah, absolutely. The Warhammer 40k competitive scene is becoming very exciting. People across the wargaming community and even other genres of games, card games and things, are seeing how fun competitive Warhammer 40k can be. It's starting to become a seasoned game, much like your normal computer games are at the moment. They're seasoned, so every season there will be new content and new skins and things that you can get. Well, it's similar with Warhammer 40k. Every season there's a new set of missions that you can play. There's a new set of rules. That the armies that are balanced differently, and that they've changed it to this season so that nothing it stagnates. Everything is changing such that it's all, you know, it's always exciting to play. You know, one month you might have an army that's not doing so great, but then they might release an update and it's really good, and you can go to these events and do really well with the army that you've got. We've also got people in the in the celebrity spotlight that love playing Warhammer 40k. They also do play competitively. For example, Henry Cavill of the Witcher series, you might have seen him, or Superman, for example. He plays Warhammer 40k. He is often on many of the content channels that you might see on Instagram or YouTube, etc. He's been to Warhammer World in Nottingham and done interviews there. He is also up for starring in a Warhammer 40k TV show that has been signed off by Amazon, coming in the next few years. So it's just going to, it's just these kinds of things, changing it from a kind of a standard war game to a seasoned game like you would a video game, having TV shows endorsed by big companies, having big celebrities endorse this and get you know the name, just the idea of Warhammer 40k tabletop gaming into the mainstream means that it's just going to propel the scene into not just the thousands of players, but the tens of thousands of players, the hundreds of thousands of players. You're going to start seeing players who start playing Warhammer 40k as a job, much like you saw the boom of competitive computer gaming back in sort of 2006 to the present, where you've got teams of gamers who do it as a job. They don't, that's what they practice all year round. They go to events, they earn money, and that's how they do it. And they get sponsorships. Similar with Warhammer 40k. That's where it's going to be going. So you're going to be getting traveling teams. You're going to be getting the US coming over, playing at events in the UK. You're going to be getting people from Europe, from across in Asia. You're going to be getting people coming and playing in the UK under their team name, or just because they want, if we're there from the ground up, much like some of the other events companies are in the UK, so if we're already there, as these sort of this doubling of players happens, we're almost an institution in the Warhammer 40k community, because we'll have always been there to these players.
So with you mentioned, almost as a sort of a final question, I mean, you mentioned that in the UK there is the original Warhammer tournaments and whatever, more established, doing bigger events and things like that. There's yourselves that have entered into the market, but there is no one else doing this in the UK. Is this a model that is replicated overseas? I mean, you mentioned about people coming from the US and from Asia and places like that. Is this a scene that is, in terms of mobile events, already established there, or is this new everywhere?
As far as we know, now obviously, as much as someone in Eastern Europe might not know that we exist, we also might not know that they exist because they're only local. But as far as we know, there isn't anyone running the frequency and spread of events at the scale that we're running them in the scene at the moment. The events that you would see, these I guess traveling bands that you would see, are the big events, the super majors. The American events are huge, 1,000 players plus. The UK, the biggest UK, the ones, the next step up from us for a traveling event in the UK is sort of 300 to 400 players. So our scale of events, our real local feel, as far as we know, we're the only people that do it in the scene at the moment.
And let's face it, you know, if you're starting in Yorkshire, there's plenty of other counties that you can expand the model once you've proven the concept that this works in the numbers that we're talking about, of, you know, 32 players, or even if it goes bigger, an event over a half day or an evening or a 2-day event. That is a scalable model, and that's really exciting for the UK and the growth of this industry. As you say, there is a definite appetite for it. It's going to be helped by, you know, global TV rights and various different stars, you know, producing TV series about the theme of it, and increasingly, you know, the general theme of, you mentioned sort of Henry Cavill and The Witcher, but that kind of genre of things that are going on to the TV is pretty prolific at the moment. And if there is a real life enactment kind of thing, then that's going to increase the popularity. So yeah, exciting times, and, you know, a very good decision to start the business model in the way that you have post lockdown, to cater for a very different kind of audience rather than just going to a shop. So it's bringing us towards the end of the interview. Is there anything else that you want to add in, Elliot, or anything that we've not covered that you'd like to expand on? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just first of all say thanks, Ron, for having me on. I appreciate you taking your time to get to kind of ask me about my business. The Warhammer 40K scene is very exciting at the moment. It's growing rapidly, and it's nice to not have dived into a saturated market. It's something that you don't get a lot nowadays, really, especially with the advent of social media and things. There's always someone doing it already, and we, as much as we have had challenges with getting our name out there, it wouldn't have been nearly as difficult as if the market was already saturated. Yeah. And you know, and the community is great. The Warhammer 40K community, along with all kind of gaming communities, is fantastic. The people are awesome. So everyone's so nice. People who come to the events are just there to have a great time and play together and increase the community. Everyone is really sociable, and even if we always encourage players, that even whatever level you are, you can just come to an event, meet new people, and you can see the level of skill that some of these the top players have, but you don't need to be intimidated by that. You know, it's just a great experience to be there with the great players. You know, it's almost like, what I liken it to is if you were told at 15 that you could go play for Manchester City just at the stadium. That's essentially what it's like. You can go play with these top players, and it's just great. Just great. So yeah, no, I really appreciate your time, Ron.
I was going to say, just to prove that we are recording this live in the context of using Man City and how they've gained additional resource for their club. Probably not the ideal time to mention that as of today, with everything going on and the 100 breaches, was it, or something, in terms of their pay policy. So I'm joking. So apologies to any Man City fans, but it was almost inevitable, that, wasn't it? There we go. So well, that does bring us to the end of the interview. So once again, I really would like to thank Elliot for sharing with us. It's been really insightful, very enjoyable, and I say it's exciting times for your industry. So thank you for sharing that. If, like Elliot, you want to share your business journey and want to showcase your business, simply get in touch. We'll get our team to book you in. We'll run your own interview. You can use that for your own marketing, and it's a great way of sharing your story with a wider audience. So thank you again to Elliot, and thank you to all of you for watching yet another of the Business Showcase interview series. We'll see you soon. Take care.